Joining us to discuss more what Zimbabwe needs to do about its economy is Channels TV business editor Bosun Omofai.
It's good to have me.
Certainly. Bosun, what's the state of Zimbabwe's economy as we speak?
I think everyone in the world knows that the economy was in a very bad shape. 37 years, you find problems with the structural pillars of the economy that you may not be able to depend on them. Most likely they'll become politicized, polarized, and weakened, that they can't deliver growth and they can't deliver on wealth creation. So a one-person rule or one-man rule for 37 years has done quite a lot of damage to the state of the economy. It has isolated the country. In terms of foreign trade, and not significantly anything outside the SADC region was what Zimbabwe was able to achieve. So in terms of you can't have access to international finance, you have limited access to foreign trade, you can't take aid. So the international isolationism of Zimbabwe was one of the major problems the country ever had.
Emerson, Mnangagwa has promised to create jobs, a lot of it at that. The IMF seems to think that it will take more than that to fix the economy. What do you think?
I think the incoming president is making some right sound bites, and I think that is good enough. That's
sound bites?
Yes, sound bites. The sound bites, look, and I just listened to what you play back. That is good. The sound bites in terms, what are the sound bites? He knows that people need jobs.
Yes.
This is a country that is a food basket, so agriculture is not foreign to them. Mm-hmm. The industrial as well as a mining sector. So they're used to all of this. So they're going to work on that very quickly. But they also need to balance a few other things. The international community needs to come in. They need to be able to reschedule their debt. They're very heavily indebted, not to the IMF. They've paid back on what they owe to the IMF. They need to move growth back to where they were. Surprisingly, 2013, 2014, Zimbabwe's economy was growing 5%, 4%, 3%, not even a recession. As at the Article 4 consultation the IMF had with on Zimbabwe in July this year, there were calls for structural reforms and getting the financial system back on track, getting the balance of payments back on track. But again, you can't do that. You need to remember Cuba, for example. You remember the isolationism of North Korea. When the world moves against you, as they moved against Robert Mugabe, and he was unrepentant, as it were, against the West. And that's where you find the key trading partners for Southern Africa. Look at Zambia, for example. Look at South Africa. Look at other countries within the SADC region. They depend heavily on France, Germany, UK, Italy, Spain, Greece. And all these are key trading partners for your mining and agricultural products. When those folks lock their doors on you, you're going nowhere. So the first thing it needs to do is to go on an international roadshow and let the international community know, look, I'm a different guy from Uncle Bob. I'm here to have a handshake with everybody in Washington. He needs to go to France, he needs to go to Frankfurt, everywhere. He needs to go to London and show that, yes, he's the man to do business with. So he needs all the money that can bring the foreign reserves back to current level, to better level. You're doing about $210 million. That's less than 0.6 months of imports. It's going to be a lot of problem. What has sailed Zimbabwe up to date was because agriculture was a mainstay. Folks were living from hands to mouth. But they need now to have jobs. They need to have wealth creation. They need to have financial stability that will help them see a better life ahead of them than what they've known for nearly 40 years.
Right. You talk about, the new government going on a roadshow to, tell the world that, hey,
the economic diplomacy.
Yes, things have changed. But what should be, the marketing strategy of the new government? What should they be telling the international community to say, hey, this is what we need to get our economy back on track, and this is how you can help us do
First is the new administration it talks about. Folks will need to know who is going to be in charge of finance, who's the head of the central bank, who's in charge of mining. Are they going to renew or review the mining contracts? They need to do the agricultural policy all over again. They need to see whether he's going to look at the government expenditure. Because for over 37 years, what Robert Mugabe was doing was to keep a very nice governance around himself within the political party, and they are getting paid, while the rest of the people get poor. They need to see that it's the man who's going to throw in the knife and put the economy on a surgical table and do the needed surgery. So they need to see that through a lean government. They also need to see that he will be willing to come back to international agreements. You need to call about World Trade Organization, for example. He needs to get back into international organizations. You need to get very cozy with the political and economic capitals of the world. And I'm very happy he spoke about Africa. And I think Africa should help Zimbabwe. I think the African Union should lead that, the NEPAD, the EAC, the Economic Communication for Africa, or the ECA, and the Southern African Coast should go there. But again, in terms of what he's going to tell them, Zimbabwe has potentials. It's just that it's been mismanaged. Yes, so it's a diamond in the trough, if you want to put it that way. So that is a diamond in the rough. Agriculture is there. The weather is very good. You have mining. You have industries. So this is what will propel them. All you need is a change of leadership and the pillars that will make things work. You need to find out if some ministers or head of parastatals or government agencies have been compromised over the years, and you need to just let them go very quickly and bring in new guys who will hit the ground running. Yes,
I was going to say, I have to go. I've been told we have to go, but very quickly, Emmerson Mnangagwa has been riding with Mugabe a long time. Do you think he's sellable as a president himself?
That's a point here, whether he's a dark horse, we're not too sure, whether he's a chip of the old block, or whether he's a brand new guy. Can we wait until tomorrow, Friday? And when he makes his speech, then we know whether he's an old wine in a new bottle or it's a new wine in a new bottle.
Thank you so much for your thoughts on that, Busamofaye. Speaking on Zimbabwe's economy, let's get more on Zimbabwe. Like on the streets of Harare, thousands of Zimbabweans were also out on the streets of Johannesburg's Hillbrow to celebrate what they call renewed hope for their country. The Nigerian community in Zimbabwe also watched along with citizens as the history unfolded. Speaking to Channels Television in Johannesburg, the head of governance and foreign policy program of the South African Institute of International Affairs says there's still uncertainty, but some particular issues need to be addressed quickly.
Tuesday night has been one of street partying. Zimbabweans say Christmas came in November.
We just want to say thank you, Mr. Mugabe, that you stepped down. We're so happy now that we're going to go back home and be okay.
The Nigerian community in Zimbabwe watched from the sidelines as history unfolded.
I think the better done have come.
Millions of Zimbabweans are economic migrants in South Africa, and most were not left out in the celebrations.
We are sleeping in the streets because of Robert Mugabe. Today we are happy because Robert Mugabe is going. We are happy we are going back home.
I'm working as a maid in South Africa, but I have my profession. If we go back home, we are able to do a lot of things. We are just happy. It's independence.
Beyond the celebrations, as an activist put it, Mugabe is an ideology, a political structure, and that structure is still in place and has to be dislodged. Interestingly, the man taking over from him, at least for the time being, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has been part of that structure all these years. The head of the governance program of the South African Institute of International Affairs, Dr. Stephen Groost, says there are a number of imperatives for the country.
So I think it's difficult. I'm not sure everybody has thought this through. I mean, you know, there were probably plans that President Mugabe was not going to live forever, but so certainly some thinking has been done. But absolutely, I mean, I think the number one priority is what is the role of the military? Does it pull back? Does it allow the politicians and the civilians to rule, or does it still maintain control? I think a key factor in the next few weeks is going to be the ZANU-PF Congress and what happens there. But then the priority's got to be the economy, finding some way to eat into the huge unemployment in Zimbabwe, to restore confidence both internally and with investors. The relationship with China will be important because China is one of Zimbabwe's major partners. And then what happens with elections? Do we go to elections at the middle of the year? Is there a national unity government? Is it only a ZANU-PF, and is it going to be a Lacoste faction under Mnangagwa? Is he going to reach across to some of his former opponents? That's uncertain.
One thing that was immediately brought back to life after the announcement yesterday is hope that we might actually see our country taking a different trajectory and a different path, especially for the young people.
And that hope is definitely shared by many seen here as they prepare for the work ahead back home. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dee, Channels Television News.
Coming up on Network Africa. African architects take part in the Dubai Design Week. That's in a moment.